right, welcome back to another episode with the Art of Football 365. Today is episode 46, and we're going to be hearing the story of Coach Coach Hines. But before we do that, Gronk spike the subscribe button, leave a like on one of our videos, especially this one coming out. Leave a like for us, and also leave a comment. We love the feedback, and we love everything that you guys have to say to us, and we take it into consideration for our next videos that we have coming up. Our three sponsors are Driftless Quality Wear, 312 Beef and Sausage, and Bacher Auto Group. Two out of the three are Freeport, Illinois based, so support them just like they support us. All right, let's get right into this, Gannon.
Yeah, so kind of the first question we always start out with our guests and everybody we interview is just tell us who you are, kind of sports and non-sports related. Just kind of tell the audience who Coach Hines is.
Yeah, well, first of all, I appreciate you guys having me on. I'll start with the non-sports side. Born and raised in Barrington, Rhode Island, and married my best friend 26 years ago. We're actually celebrating our 27th anniversary this June 4th. We got 4 children, 3 daughters and 1 son that are all 23 through 30, and 2 grandsons. So that's what brought us out here to California 6 years ago. Coaching wise, I've just wrapped up my 24th year, 23rd, 24th year coaching high school football. Was started out as a freshman assistant or a freshman head coach for 7 years in New Hampshire. Worked my way up to a varsity of a different program. Became a head coach at Bedford High School in New Hampshire, where I'll make a very long story short. But my first year as head coach, we set records for the state of New Hampshire, but not the records you ever want to set. We just got our teeth kicked in more than any other program in the history of football, probably. But it was a phenomenal year because it really solidified my why I wanted to coach. So we went from getting our teeth kicked in every single week to winning 2 games the next year to winning 5 games. I felt like the most hated man in the world, or at least New Hampshire. But not I, but we ended up building a powerhouse. So my last 4 years there, we went to the state championship 3 out of the 4 years. Had 144 young men in the program, and we built something really special. And then one day, my oldest daughter called. She had just gotten married, and she said, "Hey, I'm pregnant." And my heart leapt. I was like, "I'm going to be a grandfather. This is fantastic." And shortly after, my heart kind of sank. I knew my wife and I didn't want to be grandparents on the other side of the country. Yeah. So we sold everything, moved across country, and I was an assistant coach at a private Christian school out here for 2 years. Met some amazing people. Just felt the call to be a head coach again. So to bring us up to the current day and where we are now, became the head coach at Coronado High School 4 years ago. And we were blessed to have a season with all the COVID stuff going on. So we just wrapped up our season. We were able to win league and just started back in the weight room this Monday. So very, very excited about life, football, and family, you name it. So that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, and you kind of talked a little bit about that, getting your teeth kicked in them first couple years and stuff like that. So for our audience, I kind of want you to describe that process, that how you envision that as a coach, how you kind of establish a culture over time of kind of getting your teeth kicked in. How do you eventually take your team to the next level, and what is that process like enduring it?
Yeah, it's a painful process. It's I'm an optimist to a fault. Most of my family and friends will tell you, I'm almost always in a good mood, and I look at the bright side of things. When I took the head coaching job in Bedford, New Hampshire, it was a brand new high school. So they didn't have a high school before. All the kids went to private schools or to the inner city school. And it's a very affluent community. So when the administration asked me, it was in my second interview, they said, if you get the job, how long before you're in the playoffs? And I wasn't, I don't think, arrogant, but for some reason, without skipping a beat, I said 3 to 5 years we'll be in the playoffs. And both the principal and the AD laughed at me. And I was like, man, I just lost this job, Ended up getting the job. That first year, the process was painful. We didn't have seniors yet. But honestly, that was such a small part of why we lost every dang game. I created a playbook that was this big. By created, I didn't invent anything new, but talked to different coaches. But our playbook was like this thick. We ran it all, and it was all poorly run because I threw too much at them. And it wasn't. We had good players. We were young, but I tried to do way too much. Didn't utilize our assistant coaches as well as I should have. But that first year, I joke about it, but I'll never forget. At the end of every game, when you walk through, whether you win or lose, you shake hands, and what do you say to the other team?
Good
Good
game.
game. Yeah, no one even lied to us. They're just like beautiful, beautiful stadium. They're like, this is gorgeous. Like, man, we're that bad. They're not even gonna lie to us. But really, I have so much respect for any coach, truly any coach, any level, if you stay in it long enough, regardless of the sport. That being said, I truly believe in my now 11 years total of being a head coach. It's not easy, but it's a lot easier, a lot less responsibility to be an assistant coach, to be a position coach. Obviously, more responsibility as a coordinator and as a head coach. You get a lot to do. So that first year really made me look myself in the mirror more than I ever had before, as far as a football player or coach, and say, why do I want this? Is it worth it? And it was for me. The desire to be a head coach all comes down to power. And what I mean by that is I want to have the power to hire the men and women I want that know people, that love people. Yes, we have to have a knowledge of the game. Yes, we have to have a passion for the game and be committed. But the world's overpopulated with people that know X's and O's, so to speak.
Yep.
But use kids, use people for their own agenda. I've been blessed to coach with some individuals who played at the highest level, who were amazing men, obviously amazing athletes, and they were good coaches. Not the best I've ever coached with, and some of the best I've ever coached with uh, didn't play any college we would ever know about, and didn't have this illustrious career, but they loved people. So the process was a painful one. My walk every Saturday morning, those first 2 years from my truck to the coach's office was probably about 40 yards. It seemed like 4 miles. It's kind of like Green Mile, dead man walking. Um, but and we had a lot of battles, my staff and I. And as I look back on it, it was because I was blessed to have a lot of passionate coaches, who, in some rights, some of them knew a lot more than I did. So they helped me grow, and I in turn helped them grow, and have been blessed to continue relationships with the great majority of them. Um, so where I am now is kind of, I love everything about it. And I've been blessed to have been in a lot of championship games, won divisions and state championships and all that. But it's because I was able to embrace the suck, embrace getting our teeth kicked in, and I think all too often people pack it in. We, myself included, we all talk a good game, and then when life punches you in the teeth, it's like, whoa, whoa, I'm going to go back and sit in the stands and watch this game.
It's
So
really about how you respond to that too.
Oh,
absolutely,
100%.
and being willing to say, and I don't say this humbly. I'm sorry, I do say it humbly. I don't say this trying to fish for compliments. I know I have a lot of strength. I know what I'm good at. There are millions, probably, of coaches that know the game better than I do, and I feel like I know the game well. But I know where my strengths are, and I'm blessed to hire people around me that know what their strengths are. I'm an offensive guy. I'm our offensive coordinator. I coach the quarterbacks. The defense for me, that flies around a lot faster than my brain works.
I agree with you on that. I agree with you on that.
And I think some coaches don't want to admit that, and they let their ego get in the way. And you have to be humble enough and willing to say, hey, this is what I'm good at. This is what I'm going to really focus on. I'm going to improve upon these other areas, but I'm going to hire men or women that are better than I am, and I'm going to shut up and listen to them. And that's been a lot of our success, throughout the years.
That was an interesting point, especially when you said embrace the suck, because I say that a lot. So does my roommate in college. We say that it's a common phrase. So I really like that. But like when you were saying when you were telling the school board and all that, first 3 to 5 years, we're going to get to the playoffs. And then the first couple of years getting your teeth kicked in and embracing the suck. What were the core values that you stuck to get through that, knowing that there's going to be brighter days ahead?
Yeah, great question. For me, my wife often says, I used to teach a course back in our not a course, but a class back in the church we belonged to years ago. And she's my best friend, but she said, you do such a great job because you bring it down to people's level. I'm like, that. I don't bring it down. That's the only level I have. Like I'm a very, I don't have this level. It's all about people. I think core values, and I've been blessed being at Coronado now, in San Diego. I never thought culture or core values was just putting a saying on a T-shirt or a poster on a wall in the locker room or the weight room. Um, but man, at Coronado, we have the naval base. We have North Island. So we have some very affluent communities. And I live off island, by the way. I can't afford to live on the island. I live off island. But we have some very affluent communities. And some of them are the greatest people who teach their children about hard work and all that stuff. And some don't. Some hand their kids brand new cars when they turn 16 and, whatever, dealing with both of those. Then we have the naval base, and that's a revolving door of sometimes we'll have a stud move in, and I'm like, man, this kid's a sophomore. This is great. And then the very next year, his mother or father gets transferred somewhere else. Um, so the core value for me was then and still is now people. One of my assistant coaches back in New Hampshire, who was my line coach, he took over for the program when I left, when I moved out to California. And he called the Saturday morning after our first game out here. He had seen on Twitter that, no surprise, we get our teeth kicked in that first game also. And he's like, Hines, don't worry about it. He said, you knew what, I built, but it was what we had built. And he said, how long do you think it'll take you to build what we built in New Hampshire? And I said, Stank, his last name's Stank. I said, you're going to hate this answer. I said, because years ago, the answer was a calendar, if you will, 3 to 5 years. And I said, one person at a time. And he's like, all right, what do you mean by that? I'm like, yeah. And I believe this to my core. If I pour into one of our players wholeheartedly, selflessly, and help them to become better, whether they're a stud who may play at the next level or someone who may never start for our JV, that spreads like wildfire. And when they realize that we don't have an agenda, that we're not pouring into them because they're studs, but we walk by the redheaded stepchild or the kid that can't put their helmet on straight, the players see that and they sense that. And obviously, I won't mention names, but just yesterday in the weight room, one of our young men, gosh, and I'll be very careful not to say his name. I don't think he'll ever be a solid number 2 on our, and I'm talking senior year, and we don't play seniors on JV. I don't think he'll be a solid number 2 on our JV his senior year, but I absolutely love this kid because he doesn't miss a workout. He does not have an athletic bone in his body, but he works just as hard as anyone else. And the kids see that. So when I was helping him with his cleans yesterday in the weight room, and we've got freshmen that are doing 4 times more than he is, they see that and they realize that it's not just about football. So our core values, and I apologize, I'm being a little long with this, but our core values, it's people, and you can put, hard work and commitment and dedication. I believe in all of that, but it comes down to relationships and how we pour into other people.
I love
I agree.
that. That
I
was
agree
awesome.
100%. I mean, life is based on relationships. Without relationships, no one person can really get to where they want to be.
Amen.
I don't really mean to switch up the vibe, but I hate to see the Boston T-shirt because I saw an interview with you. I don't know when the interview was, but I was just doing some research, found it on YouTube. It was an interview, you interviewing Corey Proctor, and I saw the Dallas Cowboys shirt
Yeah.
on. I'm a big Dallas Cowboys guy too, so
Love it.
I love to see that when you said I'm a diehard Cowboys fan. How did you come into a connection with Corey Proctor and like kind of just describe the connection process and how that matters to kind of climb the ladder in the sports world?
Yeah, that's a funny story. So I was fortunate enough to be asked to speak at a clinic in Mississippi a few years back, and I get a private message from Corey Proctor. And I was born and raised in Rhode Island, so all my family and friends, even my wife, came out of the closet about a year or two ago and said she's a Patriots fan.
Oh,
Broke my heart. I called my lawyer right away. No, I'm just kidding. But I've always been a Cowboys fan, so I get this private message on Twitter from Corey Proctor. And I was like a 13-year-old schoolgirl. I was all giddy and stuff. And I was like, oh my gosh, Corey Proctor. So we started talking back and forth on Twitter and then exchanged phone numbers and just FaceTimed each other for like an hour. And he brought up I'm forgetting what movie it is now with Will Ferrell, where he's like, did we just become best friends? I'm like,
Step
oh my
Brothers?
God. Yeah, Step Brothers. So what happened, he said, I can't wait to hear you talk. I'm like, I didn't know he was going to the same clinic. I'm like, what are you speaking on? He's like, I'm not. He's like, I have that weekend off. I'm coming out to hear you talk. I'm like, dang. So we actually met up in the Dallas-Fort Worth airport. I'm not small, but this guy's like I think he's like 6'5". He's a mammoth.
Massive.
And as big as he is, and to play in the NFL and have the career that he had, such a humble, selfless human being. Just love the dude. But I'm walking through trying to find my terminal because I had a layover. and I see this just sea of people, and this head and shoulders above everyone else, this guy walking towards me, and he's going, Coach Hines, Coach Hines. So we end up getting on the same flight together, renting a car together. And this was funny because my wife, I don't remember the make or model of the car that she had booked for me to rent. But my knees were up by my ears, and I'm driving this little thing, and he's sitting next to me, and the car shouldn't have been able to move with the two of us sitting in it. But we just talked about faith. We talked about family. We talked about just everything and anything. And still to this day, we probably only talk probably once a month or whatever. But I love it because that's a guy that he had, I believe, 6 years total in the NFL. And I think most young men and young women don't realize that the average life career expectancy in the NFL is 1 to 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
6 years is a great career in the NFL.
Sure.
But he's smart enough where he invested money and he works hard now, and he's got a wife and 2 kids, and just a great person.
Well, before I let you get a question in, I gotta ask you, who's your favorite player on the team right now?
Uh, I'm a big Leighton Vander Esch fan.
Okay.
Yeah, I just love the energy. I love his motor. Yeah, I'd say Leighton.
So then, what do you think of the pick of Micah Parsons in the first round? Then
Love it. I mean, the guy is a friggin' beast.
he is.
Off the edge, and I hate that I'm about to say this because I hate when coaches say this, but I think we have a lot. Like I'm part of the Cowboys. I think the Cowboys have a lot of work to do defensively.
Oh yeah.
But that's coming from a high school coach who's never coached above high school. But I love that pick, and I loved when he just shared his testimony when he got picked, and just he I know nothing about him other than watching a little bit of the draft. I didn't follow him in college, but he just seems like he's going to be someone that's going to win in the locker room as much as he is in the field or on the field.
Yeah, so I was just reading one of your quotes and stuff. Good coaches coach for the income. Great coaches coach for the outcome. It's just simple little things that Bryce and I pick out through our previous episodes of quotes and little things to talk about. And that's one of the best quotes that I've seen right there. Just kind of talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, well, thank you. 95% of what I put out there on social media is mine. That one is not actually. And I don't remember where I already heard that, but I had to put that out there. I had read or heard that from someone else before, and when I do remember who it is, I'll quote, like, either tag him in it or whatever. But man, so I think way too many coaches, what that quote means to me is too many coaches chase logos, and what I mean by that is, they think, hey, I'm only a youth coach, man, I want to be a high school coach someday, or I'm only a high school coach, I want to be a Division I high school coach someday, or that, and they keep bumping up the ladder of logos. Love you, sweetie. And I think it goes back to knowing our why. If your why is to coach in the NFL, then yeah, maybe you do need to chase logos, and maybe you start need to padding your resume and getting bigger schools out there. For me, my why of coaching is to change lives, to empower people. Now, I think that pisses a lot of people off. It's like, oh, that's a lot of fluff, and you have to win games. Yes, you have to win games. I hate losing as much as the next guy, and I love winning. I love everything about the game of football, from the studying the film, breaking it down, meeting one-on-one with players and families, the weight room I'm passionate about. But my why is to empower others. So I can understand, when I took the job at Coronado, quite a few people have said to me and continue to say to me, hey, good luck. Coronado is not a football town. And it's not. It's not. We've got a water polo team there. And being born and raised in the East Coast, water polo was never on my radar. I thought about it once every 4 years in the Olympics. Like, oh, that looks cool. Didn't stay on it to watch it that long. Well, Coronado and San Diego, water polo is huge. So I see people walking around campus sometimes. I teach off campus, but I'm at the high school 5 or 6 days a week. And, their waists are this big, their shoulders are this big. And I see these monsters walking around, perfect DN, tight end, wide receivers. And I'm like, hey, introduce myself. And they're like, I play water polo. I'm like, man. So a lot of people have said to me, hey, you should apply for this job or apply for this job. And not that I would get them, but their point is apply for jobs where you're not going to have a naval base where kids are transferring all the time. And kids will always transfer to for whatever reason their parent or trainer thinks is better. But with the challenge we have at Coronado, they say it's not a football town. And for me, I'm like, done. Like challenge accepted. It is not yet a football town. We're gonna freaking get it to be a football town.
Bring it on.
And I can realize I can coach in the middle of New Hampshire, middle of San Diego, the middle of the United States. And if I truly want to empower people and change lives, it doesn't matter what division I'm at, what our logo is, or what level I'm at. If I do it right, I can change lives.
For
I
sure.
mean, before Bryce talks, that quote and what you just explained is really huge, and it's even more important for high school coaches. I think, like you speaking for yourself and everybody else, because sometimes the income, depending at the smaller schools or the size of the school you're at, always aren't always there. So you're not going to get that money straight up, but it's just the passion of coaching that weighs that.
Yeah, and I'll just add, my wife often says you share too much. I make under $6,000 a year as a head coach in San Diego, and there are probably people other head coaches like, hey, that's two more than I make or whatever. I know there are coaches in Texas, or Florida that is their job.
Money, that's
They're making
Six figures.
yeah, exactly. But with that comes the hey, you got two losing seasons back to back, and you got to uproot your entire family and move again. And for me, the whole reason we left a powerhouse of Bedford High School in New Hampshire, which not I once again, but we created, was because family is what's most important to me. So that's why we moved to San Diego. I know I could have stayed in New Hampshire and continued to go from 144 players to 150 and stay around there and stuff. When I took over at Coronado, we had 40 players, entire program. And I was like, dang, that's freshmen to seniors. But yeah, it's you can't do it for the money, and just, in my opinion, if you do it for the money, you're missing the point.
Yeah.
Well, you said 40 players. The high school I went to was a 1A school in the Midwest, and we had about 14 kids my junior year, freshmen through seniors.
Dang,
Kids, and we went to the quarterfinals, 2 games away from state.
was that 11-man or 8-man football?
11.
See, and I'm going to speak on something I have no experience on, but just hearing stuff like that gets me fired up because that's blue collar football. Like that's like you got to buckle up your chin straps and kind of do a check down below and just play football. If you're hurt, you hey, rest after the championship type thing. I love that.
That's what it was. I mean, you get done on offense, you're going right to defense. It's just the back and forth grind. But I mean, I loved every second of it. Getting that opportunity to kind of play both ways is special.
Yeah, well, and that's one of the reasons I love Leighton Vander Esch. He played 8-man football.
And yep.
He walked on to Boise State. Nothing about his, pedigree, if you will, says that he should have gone on to play at Boise State, let alone play in the NFL.
I agree 100%.
Love it.
But you kind of talked on empowering kids and empowering people. So I was listening to another interview of yours, and you mentioned this lighthouse moment. This lighthouse moment about your experience with working with kids and such and such. So kind of touch on that in a deeper manner, and what does that lighthouse moment mean to you?
Yeah, the lighthouse moment for me goes back to I've always taught elementary school, first through fourth grade, regular classroom, and I've always coached high school football. And so often people are like, man, those worlds must be so different. I'm like, no, they're almost identical. It's so often we look at the young men or young women we coach at the high school level, and they're 140 pounds or 240 or 290. They're still young, impressionable men and women. I'm the exact same person as I am in the classroom as I am on the football field. I'm just a lot more intense in the football field, and I don't yell in the classroom. Um, but the lighthouse moment for me is we all have family or friends, or we've been there ourselves, where there's that just gloss over look in our eyes. You're like, man, I'm talking with this person. They're looking at me, but they don't get a word I'm saying. They have no idea. And I think about a lighthouse where you just have that pillar, that beacon, and every so often that light comes by. And if you don't catch it at the right time, like, oh, I missed it. So those teachable moments when you see that kind of light go by, and you're like, oh wait, they're paying attention right now. And I had one of those yesterday with a young man who came in 292 pounds, about this tall. He should not be too. He should be like a buck 90. Never played football before, never worked out before, but one of his friends invited him into the weight room, and just we have our players weigh themselves every time they come to the weight room, just to track their progress. And he goes, Coach, I don't really feel comfortable weighing myself. I said, you don't have to. I said, you don't have to. I said, I would like you to, and this isn't going to be shared with anyone else. just so we can help you reach your goal. I said, what is your goal? And he goes, well, I need to lose. And he looks down and goes, I need to lose a lot of weight. I said, let's focus on losing 2 pounds. And he looked at me. I said, 2 pounds at a time. Let's focus on 2 pounds. I said, are you willing to weigh yourself? And he did. Super proud of him. And I was teaching him deadlifts, just 25 pounds, bumper plates. And this kid weighs 292 or 294. He had never lifted before, and he was feeling that. But he's coachable. And then I said, man, I hope you play football. And he stopped, dropped the weight. And he goes, do you really? And I don't know much of his background. His mother died of a drug overdose. I learned that yesterday. Lived with his father, his uncle, and his grandmother. So I know so little about him. But this young man is just, I'm pumped up about him as much as I'm pumped up about our freshman quarterback that just started for us this past season. And for our varsity, we won league. Because this young man, I mean, he might end up being a stud if he can end up losing between the three of us, and whoever listens, he's going to lose about 60 pounds. But if he focuses on 60 pounds, he's never going to get there. If he focuses on 2 pounds at a time, he'll get there. The lighthouse moment for me is finding that moment where they bought in and they truly know you care, and then pouring into them, and as cliche as it sounds, meeting our players where they are and helping them get, and this is the key for me, to where they want to be, not where we want to be. Because not every player wants to play varsity. And that sounds stupid, but some kids just want to be part of the team because they know that they don't have that ability yet and maybe never will. Some kids are in our programs because they need that scholarship to get to college. And some kids are even in $1 million homes, there's neglect, abuse, whatever it is, and they need to go somewhere 3 hours a day where someone believes in them. Yep. So that lighthouse moment for me is being in tune enough with your players or your students and being where our feet are, being engaged. So when we do see that they are truly connected, jumping on that and helping them get to where they want to be.
Man, that just gets me fired up to coach. I'm ready.
Yeah,
something like that.
And that's the thing that's special about his answer right there. We're not even talking football. It's the concepts with the kids, their families, everything off the field. And that's how you build a program. All that transpires onto on the field stuff and all that. But did you want to say something, Bryce? Sorry.
I was just saying that's what matters most. I mean, from every coach that I've started to talk to, like, it's culture first. Establish that foundation
build
first.
The relationships.
And put the X's and O's on the back burner until that culture and that family-like atmosphere is established. It gets me fired up hearing everything you're saying.
So, kind of building off, Coach, what you said with the weight room and all that. Another quote is from you: "If the only thing your players get in the weight room is physically stronger, you have failed them." And I think that's huge because I've lifted weights, since high school, and now I'm a sophomore, just finished my sophomore year in college, and I played baseball. Going from high school weights to meeting my strength and conditioning coach at college has been night and day. And I know just the benefits, my relationship with him, and it's not even because the lifting the weights, it's just the stuff that we learned in an hour weight sessions with him, doing that 3-4 times a week. So I kind of want you to just talk about that with that quote.
Yeah, and this is something I talk to our players about all the time is, and it goes back and forth with something I fully believe as far as being where your feet are, whether it's our girlfriend, our wives, whatever it is, work, you name it. There's always going to be other stuff there that we have to deal with when we get out of practice, leave the weight room. But to be present, hey, for the next hour or 2 hours, whatever it is, I'm going to be here and be where my feet are. And just like you read from the quote, it's just, I want our players constantly to have their head in a swivel. We talk about that in football all the time. Watch that crack block. Make sure you call out your DN, let them know the corner's coming or whatever. Or if you're a tight end, but have your head on a swivel in the weight room is look for someone that looks like they're not giving their all and see if you can join them in their workout, or look for someone that is struggling with a lift instead of just walking past them, or as so many coaches do also. And this would piss me off if we had coaches that did this, but we'll laugh at a younger player or snicker behind their back. Have enough character in class and love to stop and say, hey, let me show you how to do this a little bit better, and to pour into them. That's for me. This kind of goes back to one of your first questions as far as core values and culture. One of the reasons I'm so passionate about the weight room is because during the season, probably baseball is the same thing. I'm not a baseball guy, but for coaches, you have a practice plan down to every minute. We have 15 minutes for stretching in the beginning of August. 3 weeks later, we're down to 12 minutes. From there, we're down to 8 minutes. And not that we do less stretching, but we've taught them a little bit more. We want to be a fine oiled machine. you don't have as much time to really pour into people. During the off season, I can have two guys come to the weight room and say, hey, I'm going to work out with you guys today. In some lifts I'm beating them by a lot, and some lifts they should be beating me. Um, just having that connection, working out with them, and making sure they realize as players, like, and I tell our players all the time, like, go work out with each other and then go have a meal with each other. Like go grab some tacos somewhere, some burritos. We're Southern California. Go somewhere and grab something good to eat. But pour into the people around you. And I won't get on a soapbox here, but we all know someone that's battling with depression. We may not know they're battling with depression, but we all know someone. And I firmly believe that, whether it's ourselves, our loved ones, whatever. And a simple gesture in the weight room, saying, hey, let me spot you in this lift. As simple as that takes 30 seconds out of our workout time. Someone might go home and be like, man, you know what? Someone does care about me.
Changes everything.
It's huge. Like, I know, so I played baseball, like I said, in college. Every day I'm asking my teammates, hey, how you doing today? That little stuff means a lot when people ask me that. So I do that every day because you just don't know what somebody's going through. But this is really cool. But yeah, I'll let Bryce keep talking. But yeah, this has been awesome.
Just check in on your people. Like it's that
It's
simple.
little things that take 4 to 5 minutes each day. That is just
and you know what I
it's not
realized
hard.
too? Yeah, and I used to always ask players, how you doing in school? Great. And then I would get the progress reports. I'm like, whoa, hold on. So now when I ask them, how you doing in school? Great. I said, all A's and B's? And they looked at me like, whoa, no. I said, well, we have a different definition of great.
Yeah.
How are you doing? But when I ask people now also, hey, how are you? Not great, but how are you doing? I'm great. And I'll not always, but sometimes say, tell me three things you're passionate about. Like, what are three things that are great? And sometimes they can rattle off like three things, and you know they're great. Sometimes they look at you like you just asked them to cure cancer, and they're like, I have no idea. And then you have to kind of dig a little bit deeper, and you find out, they said they're great, but they're just conditioned to say it, not even out of ill intention, but just to shut people up. Hey, if I say I'm great, they won't keep bothering me. And I want to be that coach that bothers them enough to know that when they're really, really not great and they're really struggling, that they will pick up the phone. And once again, I won't share this young man's name, but a player that graduated from me 3 years ago, went off to a college, his dream school, called me one time, texted me, said, can we talk? So I called him, and he was just bawling, just having a real tough time. He was one of our captains. Real tough time in college. Wasn't playing anymore. Didn't plan on playing at this particular school. But it was just such a beautiful moment for me because he knew enough that I loved him enough to be able to reach out to me. And fortunately, he's got great friends and family also. But man, a lot of people don't. And if we can use our platform to be that blessing for someone else, that's huge.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And
And
that phone call right there, that just shows how much culture and family like atmosphere that you've established. And like that's the most important thing is like if your players trust you that much, they can call you on the phone crying. That is special. That's special.
it's a
Like
different type of
it
relationship.
is. It is. It's
And I think it goes part of that. I appreciate that. Part of that goes back to for me to talk about my greatest, not my most enjoyable, but my greatest year coaching ever so far has been my first year as head coach because I learned so much and had to go and embrace the suck and go through all that, and really solidify my why. My wife and I years ago, I think it was my third year coaching ever. One summer, my wife and I were painting a house, not our house, someone else's, for some extra cash. And one of my players, we needed an extra pair of hands. So he came to paint the house with us. Took about a week and a half every day from sun up to, 5 p.m., give or take, painting a house together and had lunch with him and got to know him really well. He ended up taking his life about a year later. Now, it's not one of those poor me stories by any stretch of the imagination. It's just, I know I poured into him. I know he knew I was there for him. But I still do think, dang, what could I have said a little bit different? And for some people, you can't. That is, I don't want to get preachy once again, but that's the course for their life, and that kind of had to happen for whatever reason. But I worked side by side with him after coaching for 4 years, painting a house every day for a week and a half, 2 weeks, and a year later he still took his life. And I think, man, it's all about people. And his family asked him to speak at his funeral, and that was it was a tremendous honor and heartbreaking. But I don't. We pray it never happens again, but I don't ever want to have to speak another young man's funeral.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's a real issue, and some people, and there's more and more, the stigma is slowly coming to an end, or the stigma is getting kind of pushed off to the side with mental health stuff, and more people are talking about it now. Bryce and I, since we started this podcast, that's been a very big vocal point of ours, is we both dealt with minor stuff kind of off to the side, but we do for the cause Friday for all of our Friday episode drops, and we do a quote. And that my last week's quote was "Be where your feet are at." So when he said that earlier, that was
Love
pretty
it.
cool because it's so simple, but it has so much meaning in a 4 to 5 word quote. Like that's the cool part about it. But we'll let Bryce wrap this one up.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to say I've had a great time learning about you. I know I've seen you on Twitter for a couple of years. I know
Same.
some of the Akron coaches from Freeport, Illinois, kind of retweet your stuff, and that's how I kind of saw you on social media. But I just want to say, like, after learning about you and all that, you preach that mental health aspect and that depression and the anxiety and dealing with stuff like that. Like, just check on your people, be there for them, regardless if they're playing sports or not. Just be a friend to someone. You don't even have to like that person. Just go up to them. A simple smile, a simple wave can change someone's day and even impact someone's life for the better. You never know what people are going through. So at the end of the day, just check on your people, regardless if they're really even your people or not. Just be that person, be the bigger person. But now I want to wrap this up and ask you. We kind of ask this question to every single person we have on as a guest. We ask for some advice, some feedback. How describe how your experience was on the show, and if you have any advice for us. I know I'm an aspiring head coach, preferably to start out in college and then work up the ranks and see where it takes me. But any advice you have for us would be great.
Yeah, for your show.
Yeah, show
Yeah.
go
Anything really.
Well,
wherever you want to go with it.
I appreciate that. For you guys in particular, I just want to thank you for having me on. It truly is an honor. I had read something, and I don't even know if this is advice. I'll make it super quick. I had read something a while ago from I'm going to forget the guy's name, but he's probably like, I don't even know if he's alive anymore, like 80 years old, whatever. Some old school like inspirational, motivational speaker doctor. But he talked about ego, and he said it's ego for me was always that cocky dude, just the guy that thinks he's better than everyone else. And he talked about ego. Said every time you edge God out, ego. And the reason I share it, maybe that's why it's on my heart. When I was first started to get asked to speak at clinics, or I was blessed last about a year and a half ago to go to the Bahamas to speak for ADT Securities, and I was like, what? Like, you guys know who Inky Johnson is?
I've heard of the name.
Okay, Tennessee player years ago who was slated to go to the NFL and his coaches thought he'd go in the first round, had a career-ending and life-changing injury where I think it's his right arm is like this big now, like it just paralyzed like that part of his arm or whatever, and just couldn't play anymore, or whatever. But the guy's story is so like you hear him speak, just mind blowing. And the reason I bring him up, when I started getting asked to speak at places, it wasn't ego, but I was edging God out in that sense of ego because I'm like, I'm a high school freaking coach. I don't have that story. I'm not Eric Thomas. I'm not Inky Johnson. I'm not. And I kept on in my mind going over the I'm not category. And finally, it was a God moment for me. It was like, hey, stop questioning who I called you to be. Because I might share the same thing someone else shares. And I guess my advice for you guys, I love the energy from your show. So I appreciate you guys. Just we don't have to have a certain title or have a certain studio or whatever the frig it is. If we have a passion, you might say, or I might say the same thing that someone else has said for 100 years, but someone else might just get my vibe better or get your vibe better or just hear it better from you or be in a place where they heard it for 20 years, but today was the day they need to hear it and have it to come out of your mouth. So I would just say, keep doing what you guys are doing. Just and let me know. And I apologize for saying this. If I don't follow you guys, I know I follow this page, your podcast, but if I don't follow you guys personally on Twitter or Instagram, whatever, shoot me a DM. I'd love to follow you guys back and stay connected.
For sure, appreciate that very much.
No, but just kind of I'll wrap this one up right after this. But when you were saying that at the end, all the different types of stuff that people have said 100 years and just getting a different vibe, that was kind of the different vibe that I got with this podcast today, because a lot of the things that you preach and that you use as your life lessons for your kids and stuff through the school, is what we've been preaching on our podcast, especially on our own segments when we don't interview anybody and just talk sports. So I thought that was a really cool thing because it was like almost the first interview that I kind of felt full circle with our guest
Mm-hmm.
because it's like it was really transparent. I mean, I've never met you or talked to you in person or any of that, but it just felt like that we really interacted and we get the same interests. And you're a high school football coach that has way more experience than anything that both of Bryce and I have done. So I thought that was really cool. But yeah, it was awesome having you on. I can't thank you enough. This was really fun and all that. But we're gonna just wrap this one up, and we always do this. We thank our sponsors: 312 Beef and Sausage, Driftless Quality Wear, and Bacher Automotive. Let me start that one over. Bacher Automotive Group. There we go. And keep viewing, liking, and subscribing to our YouTube channel, guys, and keep interacting with us, especially people back home on social media. We want to hear the feedback, and we want to know how we can make this better for you guys.